Darlene comes across as a bit of a meninist. She really seems to have her own sort of inner misogyny. Maybe it's because she's only raised boys too, so I'm sure that makes it harder. But I do think that was a low blow. What is up, fellow Beyond the Gates fans? Here to talk about today's Tuesday episode of the show. Still not the most fascinating episode, but at least it wasn't centered around two of the most boring people on the show, like Monday's very special episode was. Let's start today with the actual meat from today's episode, which to me was Eva and Isaiah out with Isaiah's mom, Darlene, who is a tough nut to crack. We learned in Monday's episode that even back in the day when Jacob and Naomi were first getting together, Darlene was a tough nut to crack with even Naomi, even though she was a Dupree, because I think Darlene felt some sort of way about them being so rich. And, today, Darlene actually quite a hypocrite when it comes to the situation with Eva, because now she's so upset that Eva and Leslie hurt the Duprees. So I do think the show has done a good job of showing us that Darlene is kind of just a judgmental woman, although I do like her so far, I will say. But yes, today's episode started with Eva very nervous with Isaiah before they were going to have lunch with Darlene. And as soon as Darlene came in to see them, she was already clearly not so happy to be there. She was being a curmudgeon when it came to the country club salad. She was even judgmental about the salad at the country club. She went on to talk about how it must have been so nice for Eva and Leslie to have all that money from Anita to fall into their laps, all that money that Anita put into Barbara's trust. Eva then went to swear that she didn't know anything about the money. She swore that she wasn't in on the plan with Leslie, that Leslie was lying to her about her father, Ted, for years, which is true. That gets swept under the rug by, the cat stands all the time. But at that same time, Eva still did play some parts in what happened to Ted and Nicole in the long run, even though along the way, Eva did try to stop her mom. I feel like today's episode is going to be one of those episodes where there's a lot of people that just hold it so against Eva because of everything her mother has done on this show. They like to group Eva into that same thing, which is sometimes fair because the show does try and write her that way sometimes too. But realistically, they have done a good job of showing us that she has that toxic connection to her mother, because that's all she really had growing up, and she has not gotten out from under Leslie's shadow. So they continue to have that toxic relationship. So there will be people on the other side that will defend Eva today, because the writing does tend to try and make us feel sorry for Eva. Anyway, during this talk, Darlene said something like Eva's mom is something else, and that's when, of course, Leslie arrived to overhear this. And Leslie decided to be her cartoon Nat self, to come in and bother them and join them without anyone really wanting her to join them. Eva tried to tell her mother that she arranged this to be her and Isaiah with Darlene, but Leslie sat down anyway. She started pushing Eva about how she still needs to come and work for the free clinic and stop working for her father, Ted. Darlene wanted to hear why Eva won't go work for her mother, because she wanted to hear more dirt on Leslie, I think. Darlene also learned during this conversation that Leslie calls Ted her teddy bear, which Darlene felt was pretty ridiculous, which we've all been saying for a long time. Although I personally have always enjoyed that nickname from Leslie for Ted. But then Darlene really started hitting below the belt, saying that it's so gracious of Ted to let Eva call him her dad, which Isaiah was trying to calm Darlene down in the conversation by this point, because that is a low blow, because Ted is Eva's father, and Ted was a person that went and had that affair also so long ago But Darlene comes across as a bit of a meninist. She really seems to have her own sort of inner misogyny. Maybe it's because she's only raised boys too, so I'm sure that makes it harder. But I do think that was a low blow from Darlene. Darlene told Leslie and Eva that they need to be ashamed of themselves for what they did to the Duprees and Ted, and that the Duprees don't deserve the carnage that they caused, and she refused to sit there any longer with them. So Eva had Isaiah go after Darlene and talk to her, and then Leslie told Eva to forget that uppity trick Darlene and said she better be glad that Leslie's biking days are over, which was kind of a veiled threat, I suppose. So on one hand, in these scenes, I mean, Leslie was being the recent Leslie, where I don't feel like she has good motivation, and is just there to annoy people, and that is what she did today. And as much as I do enjoy some of these new blood characters we've been getting, Darlene is one of them. I do think Darlene came across as, bitter today in some ways, but mostly very judgmental. So afterwards, Isaiah was talking to his mom, and she was saying she's not going to go back in and talk to them because Darlene is troubled that Isaiah is in such a good place. He has a good job at a college. He's in a good space. And she doesn't want him getting mixed up with the spawn of Satan herself, which Eva then started to overhear this. And Darlene said that if Eva is even the slightest like her mom, it's best for him to stay clear. So, of course, Eva overhears this and is sad for our ending moment of today's episode. But I thought all of these scenes were well done, and they were the most entertaining part of today's episode. Elsewhere today, Samantha and Donnell were out to lunch together. They chatted a lot about how Tyrell can't dance. He's learning to dance still, trying to not embarrass Jessica at the cotillion, who doesn't want to be at the cotillion in the first place. June, of course, was working because they were at Orphe Jean's, so she took their order, and she was basically sitting in the back watching Samantha and Donnell and the way they were looking at each other. And frankly, you all know how I feel about Donnell lately. They write him to be too much of a pussy when it comes to his mother and the Joey situation. But I do actually think Donnell and Samantha have chemistry, which is not something I could say very often on this show. June was getting annoyed with the way Samantha kept teasing Tyrell today. But June was kind of acting weird today in general. That was the vibe I was getting from the whole scenes today with June. Donnell was connecting with Samantha on the fact that Samantha and June reconnected after all of this time. And Samantha talked about how she likes having June in her life now because she's lived with two dads for so long, but there's some things she could only talk about with a woman, and she feels lucky to have both her dads and June. At first, June didn't have any good advice for Samantha about the cotillion when she was wondering what she should wear. I think June is feeling like this whole cotillion thing is for the elites, kind of similar to how Jessica is feeling in all of this. Donnell was trying to convince Samantha that this whole cotillion is not about the vote for the queen at the cotillion or whatever the hell it is, and was trying to give Samantha advice on how to use her background for good. All of her background with Samantha, how she was adopted, how they could use her social media for good use because she has been involved with the whole Chelsea Cat campaign on social media, so she's good at social media. It was pretty clear at this point in the episode that Samantha was crushing on Donnell, but then Donnell had to go and admit that when he was younger, he had a huge crush on Chelsea because of her being a model and her being on social media. He basically said he was a stan. So that seemed to kind of upset and crush Samantha with her having a crush on Donnell. They then took a selfie together for social media. But when Donnell left, Samantha was certainly sitting there upset, which June noticed. She could tell by the look on Samantha's face that she likes Donnell. Samantha said that she likes him as just a friend, and June said good because he is too old for her. But then their talks kind of went to the left when Samantha wanted June to come to the cotillion, but June doesn't think it's a good idea. She said she's not a part of the elite club and doesn't want to do anything to embarrass Samantha. Samantha was hoping that June would at least think about it, but June said her mind is made up. So this is clearly going to be the problem between Samantha and June this week that we saw in last week's preview. I was more interested in the Samantha and Donnell because I actually did feel they had a little bit of a young love connection, and the irony that Donnell is too old for Samantha when the actress that plays Samantha is older will always be funny to me. It's something that happens with the casting of Samantha a lot on this show, it feels like. But I was here for them today, and I don't even like Donnell these days because of the way he's written in the Vanessa and Joey storyline. Elsewhere, Martin was reading about his race for the Senate, and Samantha called him at the beginning of the episode. Then Smitty came in to chat. Smitty was really pushing for them to have a quickie today for lunch instead of actually having lunch, but Martin was actually the one to push against that because both he and Smitty are really busy. Smitty was glad that Martin saved him from himself because then he got a text from Jacob. And then we saw Jacob in our favorite alley. Jacob was so panicked in the alley today waiting for Smitty. So here comes Smitty to the alley where Jacob's supposed to be so undercover, even though he seems to be there 24/7. And Smitty seems to be there at least half of 24/7. Like, honestly, I didn't even understand why Smitty had to meet Jacob today. Just so Jacob can complain about his worries on this undercover case. I still contend that this Impaler storyline just is not working whatsoever. And I don't understand why Elon doesn't seem to be involved with it at all. Like, that's who Jacob should be checking up with every episode. Not Smitty. Also, Jacob was pissy at the beginning when Smitty was coming late because Smitty said he had a hard time getting away from his family. And Jacob gave Smitty crap because Jacob has to spend all this time away from Naomi. I still don't know why we had that special episode yesterday with Jacob and Naomi if it's not going to lead to Jacob's death, which I don't think it's gonna. I just feel like this whole Impaler storyline is wasting our time. Anyway, Jacob was frustrated, having a hard time getting information out of Grayson to find this woman at the hospital that seems to be ahead of Grayson in the chain of command. So Smitty wants to do some snooping at the hospital, which Jacob finds so dangerous because, you know, the show has to tell us that this whole investigation is so dangerous instead of actually showing us more. Even when that person got stabbed, they didn't show us that. And so that is a part of the big reason why this storyline is falling flat. But yeah, Smitty wants to be the one to break the story, so he wants to snoop at the hospital. Jacob was giving Smitty an out because it's so dangerous, but Smitty wants to go ahead and do this. Jacob doesn't want Smitty snooping around the hospital without a clear plan, so Smitty says he's going to have a plan. So we'll see if Smitty has a more interesting part of this investigation than Jacob has. The only other thing on today was Vernon and Anita. Anita was writing something when Dani interrupted, saying that she's in a crisis, saying she's afraid to look at her new modeling photos. Anita thought it was suspicious and that Vernon basically had Dani come over with an excuse so that Dani could babysit her, and Dani did rat Vernon out, and Vernon kept calling Dani a snitch, which actually did make me laugh. But then Vernon went to go work with Martin, and Martin wanted advice from Vernon on how he and Anita keep the spark alive, or more so have the time to keep the spark alive. They also went over Martin's numbers for his campaign moving in the right direction. And then Dani and Anita looked at her modeling photos, which were apparently great. Didn't really feel like that was anything more than filler today, though. But at least it wasn't about Anita's cancer, so it wasn't depressing. So I guess that's something. So yeah, that was today's episode. I do think the Darlene stuff was good. Even if Leslie was as annoying as usual, at least it was something entertaining happening on this show.